think I want to start with Anthony Edwards. I want to start with Minnesota. So let's do that, because Minnesota, I think coming into the year, you're like, okay, do we put him down on the contender list? It's usually a pretty short list. The teams are fairly obvious. And then every now and then we have some surprises. And in the aftermath of the Gobert trade, where now we have to kind of look at it as how it looks now versus what the price was. The price none of us will ever get over. But Gobert does look better. And I think Ant's taken it to another level. And with their defense and kind of seeing who they would be, again, I don't know that I'm picking them to beat Denver here, but at least it's a few weeks in of, at least for me, feeling a little bit differently about their ceiling. You?
A lot differently. I remember in the preseason, I was doing some TV in Boston, and they have that Stratomatic machine that they use to predict the NBA Finals. And the Stratomatic machine picked the Celtics against the Timberwolves. And at that time, it was wild. It's like, this is just proof that this stuff is stupid, doesn't really work. And maybe it'll turn out to be that way. We're still, a dozen games into the season, but they're a lot better than I thought they were going to be. And, one thing that Timberwolves people told me, for months, really, even going back to the end of last season when it was all kind of unraveling, they said, we got to see what this team looks like fully healthy. We haven't seen, Rudy and Towns playing together. We haven't seen, Towns much at all, last season. We haven't just seen this group as it could be. You couple that with Edwards being significantly better than last year. I expected him to take a leap offensively. I don't think I anticipated him being this good defensively. Like, you go back to that Boston game they played a week or so ago, just being able to to play the kind of defense he did against Jason Tatum and a little bit against Jaylen Brown in that game. I mean, he's as good a two-way player as we're seeing in the league right now. So I didn't see that leap coming. Jaden McDaniels, another guy taking a step forward. I don't know, as we record this, I don't know where they are defensively, what top three, they're right there in that mix in efficiency. But what they're doing just feels kind of sustainable, because I think Rudy can be this kind of player for a while. You've finally seen Towns start to play well over the last week, 10 days, and Edwards is only going to keep getting better. So my opinion on them has changed a lot in the last couple of weeks. They look like a real contender.
Yeah, they're still number one.
Yeah.
They're number one in per 100 possessions. I completely agree with Ant. And when I look at the wins against Denver and then that Boston win in particular, where you can make all sorts of excuses for a result, but if there's a horror movie season coming around for Jaylen Brown, like all they'd have to do is show up a trailer that says Jaden McDaniels, because the way he attacks people trying to bring the ball up, and it's not just Jaylen Brown. Like when he decides he's going to get into you and he's in your jersey and you're like, I can't even get set up. I can't even get in my move. I can't even get an angle to the screen. It's almost like a one-man pressure where the whole purpose is for the other team to start their possession at like 12 in the shot clock, as opposed to just bringing it across at 16 or 17. And with Anthony Edwards going at Tatum on that last possession late and tying him up and then looking like he just wanted to tackle him through his breastbone, like he just went into him, and there was an attitude that you have to have. Defense is a prideful thing. There's people with amazing physical traits and athleticism, but a lot of it is a decision on how bad you want to play it, because it's such a long season. And I've seen that jump from Ant. And the other thing I think with him is his drive and kick playmaking. He did it the other night against Golden State for the biggest shot of the game, where he brought everybody with him, but then was still aware. And usually a young guy, it takes him a lot longer to understand, hey, all this attention is coming to you. Your teammates have easier options. So it's not a negative, despite what talk shows will do with LeBron 20 years in when he decides to make the right pass. Which is his own topic. Like, seeing some of that stuff from Anthony Edwards gets me excited. But I still would go like, look, there's going to be the cat moments I'm not going to like. But it's funny because I think if you were looking at Minnesota without Karl Anthony Towns, you'd say, well, what would be a really nice pairing with Anthony Edwards? You'd be like a big guy that could shoot. Right? And then I'm like, well, they kind of have that. There's always a handful of Towns drives where I think he's just bored and is upset he hasn't had a bigger hand in the offense, and then he'll just kind of plod through everybody, and hell, he probably gets a foul enough for it to be worth it. I still wonder about Gobert in a playoff series against another guard, bringing him out. I also worry about like some of the spacing stuff. Like, is Gobert worth it on defense? to avoid some of the 5-out stuff. But here's what I do like is that at least with their roster nobody's stopping Jokic, but impeding it. If the Lakers and Anthony Davis are rolling late and he's healthy, and seeing how helpless Golden State was against it, when I watch them, I go, I can see them having options for Chris Finch, who's a really good coach, of adapting to what their playoff matchup is. And that's what gets me excited beyond all the other stuff.
Yeah. Mike Conley, too, talking to some of the coaches that have gone up against the Wolves in the last couple of weeks, Mike's never going to be a great defensive player. But the one thing I've heard repeatedly is that he's giving maximum effort on that end. Like you're getting the best out of him defensively so far during the season. And if Mike Conley can just be credible, average on that end defensively, that's a big plus for Minnesota. Keeping Chris Finch, I thought was a move that I probably wouldn't have done. Like after I didn't think that Chris Finch was the right fit for this roster. You go back 2 years ago before the Gobert trade, they were top 15 in defensive efficiency, but that was because Chris Finch's smoke and mirrors defense. He was doing a lot of trapping, pressing, just a whole bunch of gimmicky stuff. When you bring a true kind of, paint protector like Rudy Gobert in, you're going to try to pair him with Towns. I was one among the people beating the drum for them to go after Frank Vogel, last year, because Frank Vogel was a coach that, had succeeded with multiple bigs. He knew how to coach that type of team. But Chris Finch has done an unbelievable job of kind of incorporating all these guys together and making it work early in the season. And look, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I do agree with you that get to the playoffs, and I'm going to consistently wonder, can you play Towns and Gobert together, especially in the fourth quarter of games? That's the multi-million-dollar question. Do you have to bench one of those two guys for the last 10, 11 minutes of the fourth quarter because smaller, quicker, better teams are going to make you pay for having those two guys out on the floor? That's no matter what happens during the regular season, that's going to be a lingering question until we get to the playoffs.
Finch would do it, though. I mean, I've already seen times in just regular season games, depending on kind of how a game is going, where I believe, I'd have to go back and kind of look at hey, when did he sub Rudy out or that kind of thing? What was one of those games where what, let's try to get a few minutes here without Rudy here in the fourth and see what happens. But I do think his personality is that way. So, all right. So I think we're kind of on the same page with this. Let's see in the rare hyperbole area that I don't visit all that often. But I'm such an Edwards fan. I tweeted out he's my favorite player to watch now. He's my number one option league pass. If I'm rolling around, all right, we get the screens up, and I go, okay, what time do the Timberwolves tipping off? I'm like, okay, let's make sure. It's like Mahomes now when that first started happening. We're got to have a TV screen on Kansas City. If I said I would only take 3 players ahead of him right now moving forward, okay, not for the season, just we're talking the rest of their careers. Is 3 too short of a list? Is that list longer in your opinion? Because Jokic is the no-brainer because on top of everything, he's going to age great. I'm not worried about that. I feel like Luka was on sale in a way he'll never be on sale again this offseason because of how their season ended and some of the dings with him. Luka still might be the best single option in the NBA of I need a bucket, man. So, okay, cool. The ball's in my hand. I'm just going to go ahead and get you one because no one can really do anything with me. As great as SGA is on his drives, Luke is still scarier because physically there's just a really hard, you just can't match what he's doing. So then it becomes a Giannis thing where if somebody said Giannis ahead of Ant, and I'm talking about moving forward, not right now, I'm not going to tell them they're wrong. And then I think SGA's brought up a little bit, but I think I'd rather have Ant, which may be wrong. But is there anyone else? Is that list too short? Is it 7 or 8 for you? Is it 5 or 6? Tatum probably should be brought up.
I think it's under 5 because unless you're talking about Jokic, and I agree with you, Jokic is going to play this way if he wants to play this way till he's 38. My fear with Jokic is he decides at 32, he wants to go raise horses and doesn't want to play professional basketball anymore. Which
less money in it.
I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility though. That he, they win a couple of championships and he's like, you know what, I'm good. Besides Jokic. You want to try to keep that list of guys 26 and under, 25 and under, whatever, benchmark you want to make. And that, I think Luka is there, even though he's not the two-way player Ant is, he's just so insanely good offensively that you have to put him on that list. SGA is interesting because SGA is also a two-way player. But I think Ant's athleticism, a little bit more versatility maybe, I would put him slightly above SGA on that list. The other guy I put up on that list is Tatum because he just keeps getting better, right? Like he's not where Ant is defensively, but I don't think he's done growing in that respect. I think I see signs, every year that he's getting a little bit better in that. He certainly has the physical tools to be a really good defensive player. And offensively, I think he's kind of closer to Luka than he is to Anthony Edwards. I think he's got more in his bag offensively than Edwards does and maybe ever will because of his size and his length. So, for me, it's Luka, putting Jokic on a shelf here. It's Luka, it's Tatum, and then SGA kind of neck and neck. I'm like Giannis, love him now, but I'm not convinced he's going to age tremendously, though, because he plays so hard and plays so physically. I wonder if that body starts to break down, when he gets into his 30s. So I'd probably just put, those three guys in the mix over Edwards.